in every 10 people in India who need a heart surgery are the only ones able to afford it. Heart surgery could range anywhere between 5 and 10 lakhs to anywhere to the range of 25 lakhs. So there was this one person who decided, seeing how the plight of the Indian healthcare system is, but decided to run a hospital that suits the needs of those who can't afford it by getting money from those who can.
They do not look at the high revenue per patient, but number of surgeries which they can do it in a day.
Guess who he has treated and has been the personal physician for? It's a name that you cannot guess. Like, तो सोच ही नहीं पाएगा. अगर guess कर लिया तो मैं podcast छोड़ दूंगा. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ayush and we have Pratik on the
Hello,
panel.
hello.
Today we have a stock that's something that we haven't really covered before, an industry that we haven't really touched upon earlier, and is a lot more of an emotional appeal than a financial investment. I think this touchy topic of people going to hospitals, people getting ill, people not being able to afford healthcare in India is a very sensitive topic, not just now, but it's been like this for millennia. And although India's claimed to be one of the foremost intelligence in healthcare, our own citizens seldom get the opportunity to express or access that sort of service. To put point to that, 2 in every 10 people in India who need a heart surgery are the only ones able to afford it. Now, the average heart surgery could range anywhere between 5 and 10 lakhs to anywhere to the range of 25 lakhs. And this is something that's 1/10 of what the US charges. So neither is there an option for the rest of the 98 out of the 100 people who can't afford it to afford it in India. And if they go abroad also, options aren't very widely available. So there was this one person about 20 odd years ago who decided, from his own humble beginnings, seeing how the plight of the Indian healthcare system is, and he decided to not just be one of the best cardiac surgeons from India, but decided to run a hospital that suits the needs of those who can't afford it by getting money from those who can. So we've termed him some sort of like the Robin Hood of heart surgery in India. And this man who we're going to talk about is Dr. Devi Shetty, very, very famous personality across the country. And he's had a lot of TED Talks. He's given a lot of commentary on the entire heart surgery space because he was one of the first few heart surgeons to come from this part of the Indian subcontinent, from the Asian subcontinent back in the 90s. So yeah, Dr. Devi Shetty and the company that we're covering today is Narayana Hrudayalaya. Not a very famous name, not a name that really rolls off your tongue, but
Yeah,
is
it's becoming famous, I think, in the recent months.
yeah, yeah. In
The
fact,
whole hospital space was running, and this was, I think, one of the leaders in that particular run up, right?
correct, correct. Because as we see the numbers, just the stock price, it trades at about 18,000 bucks, right? 1,800 bucks right now, and that's after a 46% rally just in the last 6 months. So for
In
an
such a market.
in such a market where I don't think a lot of hospital stocks are even listed. Like the only other payer that's very widely known is Apollo Hospitals, and they don't follow nearly the same business model that Narayana Hrudayalaya does. In fact, they're the only ones in India who are at this scale who function in a way that Pratik will be explaining, of course, in the course of this podcast. But this is what we have. This is the man, the story, and the stock that went through such a turmoil in 20 years to get to where they are right now, where they can proudly say that we take money from the rich, we give them healthcare also, but the same almost equitable healthcare is given to those who can't afford it at 1/5, 1/10 of the price. And they're still getting, like, their financials are incredible, which is also something that we'll see later. But let's look at the narrative first. Now, Dr. Devi Shetty also came from very humble backgrounds. He wasn't very well to do when he started off in his childhood. But the need to be a doctor who treats people regardless of financial or economic or religious status is something that was driving him from the beginning. In fact, he grew up to be the first ever cardiac surgeon to conduct a neonatal cardiac surgery, which is basically for those who are within
Too
the first
young.
month, 2 months of their birth. So he did it on a 21-day old baby. And that's not something that's very easy to come by. That's not a very common surgery to do. So he was the first. So he's definitely someone who's been a pioneer in this field in general. But cut to 2001 is when he founded Narayana Hrudayalaya in the heart of Bangalore with a 280 bed setup, very small. But the entire process was, we're going to charge the rich a lot of money. We're going to take that and somehow subsidize cost to such an extent where the affordable can get what they need. Cut to 2005, this company is growing. They start making health insurance and hospital insurance products, which were very affordable to the point where it was just 5 rupees a month, and they were mainly targeted towards agricultural sector. So farmers who just couldn't afford it, but because of their strenuous work, the need for heart surgery came up very early in their lives. So he started the Yashaswini scheme where it was 5 rupees a month. So not only have they done hospitals well, healthcare well, but they've done the affiliated servicing very well as well. 2012 is when they kicked it up a notch and set up a health city in the Cayman Islands. Now, I think the first thing that I mean, the smile on your face clearly says something. Why don't you share what you're thinking, Pratik?
No, but honestly, even when I read about this, I thought there might be something fishy regarding this. Yeah, they might be siphoning money or what. Yeah,
You never know, right? I mean, that kind of thing always stays hidden. But the Cayman Islands name is associated with such fraudulent behavior that you're bound to think कि पैसा तो खाया है.
agreed,
Even if
agreed.
he is such a साफ दिल. To add to why he's such a साफ दिल person, guess who he has treated and has been the personal physician for, Mr. Dr. Devi Shetty. It's a name that you cannot guess. Like, तो सोच ही नहीं पाएगा. I'll give you three guesses. अगर guess कर लिया तो मैं podcast छोड़ दूंगा.
Indian.
Okay, Jal, you could say sort of. Like she helped Indians a lot also.
And as a what is the time period as a timeline? कुछ अगर
Okay, timeline I'll give you. 97 is when this woman passed away. Now, 10 years within that span is when Dr. Devi Shetty was operating as a full-fledged doctor. So yeah,
because
you're not completely wrong. She is Indian, but she's half Indian. She's very like famous personality to the point ki even a 5-year-old kid knows who this woman is, even if she's died in 97. And her birth date is also on a very particular, like it's reputed. So I'll give you another clue. She helped cure a very common disease also.
I think now I know. Well, I can just
Now
take
you must
random
have.
guess. Yeah, Mother Teresa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Imagine the shock when we're reading about Dr. Devi Shetty, and he was the personal physician for Mother Teresa when she was on her deathbed and a little before that. So crazy. I mean, the legacy that he comes and he's built, this Cayman Islands thing is just a blip on that. And also that health cities for that premium clientele. So they come there, they spend their black money, probably. It's just an assumption. And that's where most of his concentrated premium clientele comes from. I mean, Cayman Islands is already a very hot, like a big hotspot for
All the wealthies.
premium
Yeah.
surgery also. So yeah, he set one facility up there. They listed 5 years after that in 2017, 2016 at a 7,000 crore valuation. And let's take a look at what they're valued
Yeah. What is
now.
the current market cap?
36,797
Almost 5x in what? The
in
9 years.
9 years. 5x
9 years.
in 9 years. For a hospital stock that by the business model or like just by the look of it should not be making that much money, but somehow his ability to juice out returns and also tend to his CSR objective is brilliant. And then now cut to 2024 25, he has 47 facilities, 24 hospitals, 4,000, 5,000 crores in revenues and almost 20,000 employees. I mean, this is brilliant. I don't know how he's done it. So I think one more fact that we can throw again for the audience of those who aren't aware of who Dr. Devi Shetty is. And I'm sure once you click on this video in the suggestions, you will find multiple videos of him already popping up because of YouTube's algorithm. But one cost saving mechanism that he did was instead of using a traditional AC, he used cross ventilation as a concept. So, I mean, obviously he's smart already, but he used his intelligence to save cost here so that he doesn't have to use ACs at all. And he sourced a lot of the equipment for the hospital from like syringes and gloves to like full fledged machines that conduct the surgery all by himself so he can get the best deal possible. Because
He
what
has a
better?
better control, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, that's what we're at with Narayana Hrudayalaya's journey, Dr. Devi's journey, and it's a very short crisp version of it. You can find elaborated versions elsewhere. We'll have the vlog in the this thing as well in the description, but let's do a quick brief again on the business model. Now, Pratik, could you go take away with that?
Okay, so as you mentioned, that same they have two sets of patients, right? One is the premium clientele, which they usually treat in the health city Cayman Islands, which is I think around 20% of the patient count, and then the rest are the the farmers with the Yashaswini coverage. They are there, so there are these two sets, and as you mentioned that the NH usually takes a premium or they charge at market level rates to these wealthy clients which is I think in the range of around 5 to 10 lakh rupees. And the subsidized patients, which are the farmers, they are usually charged in the range of I think 1 to 2 lakh rupees. On an average, I think around 1.5 lakh rupees. And why is this possible? Because of the insurance which they have through the Yashaswini coverage. It's their, I think it's an NH's own health insurance,
It
right?
is, it is. It's an
Yeah.
in-house product.
And then there are other subsidies which they give to these patients, so that is there. And so what usually happens is, so they usually rely on high volumes, for you can say it is a commodity hospital, for example, because
They've
it's just a
commoditized
yeah,
surgery.
it's just a numbers game. Now they do not look at the high revenue per patient, but they'll instead look at number of surgeries which they can do it in a day or in a particular period, and they
Right,
try and make revenue on the number of surgeries, or basically the volumes. So that is there. And because it's these fixed surgeries, and obviously there is fixed cost, and there are so many number of people, so the cost gets spread out easily. So that way the operation costs are also low when you look at it, when you look at a per operation basis.
right.
That is there. And I think, to give you a glimpse of the revenue mix, I think as of 2024 December, 31% of the revenues coming from walk-ins. So basically this shows that there is brand recall
Right.
about this company. कि हाँ लोग जानते हैं इस कंपनी के बारे में. एंड अगर 80% of the people are those farmers or the subsidized patients,
Hmm.
obviously they'll be
The
talking
ones
कि हाँ
coming in
अरे
walk-in,
मैं
yeah.
गया था वहाँ पे, it was cheap for me, you
Correct,
could also go over there. So I
correct.
think that is why one third of the revenue is coming from
And I
walk-ins.
think that is part of his vision as well.
Hmm.
So it makes
That
sense.
is there. And then other 17% comes from the government schemes.
Right,
Again, it shows कि हाँ भाई government also is there supporting this noble cause
correct.
done by Dr. Devi Shetty. That is
So
there.
31% walk-in, 17% government schemes. That's almost, let's round it off to 50% of
50%, yeah.
revenues coming from there, and the other 50 is pre-booked. Out of which mostly the higher percentage will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
for the premium clientele. Okay, interesting, interesting.
And again, as you mentioned that, Devi Shetty being smart, that he is already, gone himself and, procured all the
Right,
surgical equipment and stuff. So they usually try and, bulk procure stuff in bulk, so that, again, they get discounts very easily on their purchases. That ideally helps them, managing their cost at a much better level as compared to their peers.
right.
So just an example, so Apollo Hospitals, the other largest listed player in the hospital industry, charges I think around 10 to 15 lakhs for all these surgeries. But as Narayan Hrudayalaya charges I think around 1.5 lakh rupees, one tenth of what Apollo charges.
Brilliant, brilliant pricing. I think one more factoid to throw at, I think you said volume game, right? So just to give, I'm not exactly sure whether these numbers are accurate, but I did see this and come across Mr. Devi Shetty mentioned this, wherein if Apollo hospitals, for example, or any large scale hospital can churn out, and there's a wrong use of the word, but churn out 30, 40,000 heart surgeries in a given period of time, let's say a year, Narayana Hrudayalaya can do more than 120,000 surgeries in that same plan. So this is like he mentioned the 120,000 number at some point, but the peers can maybe scratch the surface at one third, one fourth of that. So while they might be making more money in revenues, where Apollo Hospital stands at about 16, 17,000 crores in revenues, with that lesser number of surgeries or lesser number of procedures, Narayana Hrudayalaya is at 5,000 crores of revenue. But because of the amount of cost saving he's done and because of the volume game, the EBITDA margin with Apollo hospitals is at 20%, sometimes lower, and Narayana Hrudayalaya is at 24% and sometimes
24%.
higher. So that delta of 4, 5, 6% that Narayana Hrudayalaya is able to manage because of Devi Shetty's involvement, because of the vision, and because of how they've executed it over 20 years. I mean, it's nothing short of brilliant. And they've done it with less to no funding. In fact, there was an interview, I think maybe 10 years ago or so, where Dr. Devi Shetty is confessing the fact that I never thought that I would have to raise money from private investors because this was never about raising
Making
money. This
money
was
on
never
it.
about listing an
Not.
IPO, nothing. It was about serving the people, that which I'm probably he must have gotten that Kida from Mother Teresa at some point, or they were both just two peas in the same pod, but incredible. And Narayana Hrudayalaya's growth at the same 5 year span, while Apollo is at 15% CAGR, is Narayana is at 18%, 20%.
So there has been a sustainable growth. It's not like
Absolutely.
there have been one-offs in the journey.
Correct. Like it's a very structured, focused plan that they've executed, wherein it's just high volume plus low cost equals growth. And they've executed it beautifully.
Yeah, but this has been, the current situation. But again, as investors, we need to look forward. So
Absolutely.
what's in store for future for this company?
Okay, so let's just give a brief look. Now, Narayana Hrudayalaya has about 6,000 odd beds. This is across the 40 plus facilities that they have. And that's not a very large number considering Apollo has 10,000 plus beds. But with Narayana Hrudayalaya's focus being this affordable healthcare plan, they've got a lot of cool high tech machinery. In fact, in one of the recent events that they had for PR, they had this Derive X. It's some sort of a very high focus laser machine.
Derive X.
I believe that's what the name is. I'm not sure. I'm sure the comment section will know better. But it was a machine that can be so precise in heart surgery where you can put a stent at 6, 7 a.m. in the patient's heart in the morning and they're out by 6, 7 p.m. in the evening,
Oh,
same day.
impressive.
And the cost of that surgery will be a fraction of what it would take to hire four doctors, anesthesiologists, nurses, etc., etc., etc.
Manpower cost
Manpower is
association.
halved by multiples. So yeah, so they plan on getting more technology involvement. That's point number one. Point number two, they want to get more beds out. How are they going to do that? Now, Mr. Devi Shetty's son is also involved in this business very heavily, and he's taking over the next phase of the expansion. And he expects there to be an addition of about 2,000 plus beds at least in the next 3, 4 years.
So basically, they are increasing their capacity by 33% if
Right,
there's
exactly.
6,000 beds
Right.
and adding
So they'll
2,000 beds at
almost
least
match up to Apollo's current
current
capacity in the next
capacity.
2 to 3 years. And they will do that with a mix of equity raises, debt, whereas right now their net debt to equity is at about 0.08 times.
So they are at a very comfortable
Very, very,
position
like
and
they
there's
can
a lot of room
easily,
to,
absolutely, to gain on more debt.
yeah.
And just for context for why 0.08x is very low, Apollo is at zero point 0.4. So again, both of these numbers are very good. But just as a
Comparison.
comparison, Narayana is doing exceptionally well. Apart from that, their entire Cayman Islands facility is going to go through a revamp. They're going to make it more compatible to more premium clientele. They'll build that so that whatever building they do there, the revenue that they derive there is going to directly affect their mission here. So they may not actually even need to raise more money because their cash reserves are in 2, 3, 400 crore wala bracket. So they could go organic
Organic
completely for
also.
this. But even if they do take debt, it's not big of a concern. So yeah, that's what they've done in terms of positives. Now, with all of this comes the need to hire just the right people to execute a vision, and that's a concern that both father son have been facing over the last couple of years, where they said, "Ki, we've gotten all this tech involvement, we've expanded the reach of the hospital in such a large extent." That they're not able to find the right fit of people. And Narayana Hrudayalaya has a very, very close connection to Karnataka and Andhra. So they tend to hire more from these two states, obviously because of proximity. Most of it is Bangalore based. So whether that works out in their favor, whether they find the right people, because all of it is execution. If they're not able to execute their affordability vision, then all of this goes out of the window.
And then I think with this point, there might also be a difficulty for them to find people who are aligned to their vision or with their vision. Yeah, that can also be issue for them.
I think the fact that this has been such a straightforward story, like we've covered it in quite a short amount of time, it's that straightforward even when you look at it by yourself. It's one doctor and his family who intend to make affordable healthcare for everyone in a very Robin Hood style, and they've done it so sustainably that they've outpaced their peers, not in terms of scale, but in terms of numbers and growth somehow. Like we've already covered a couple of numbers, but when we look at stuff like return on capital employed, so which is essentially how much money you put and how much money you're getting out of that. For Narayana Hrudayalaya, that number is at 27%, which in any standalone figure is a
Is a good number. Yeah.
brilliant number. But Apollo is at 15. So that's where you really see the difference, where the money that Dr. Devi Shetty is putting into these missions are turning around and churning around so much more return for him because of that volume game that you mentioned, that it's almost a no-brainer as to why the company also is valued a little higher than Apollo, where at a 1 year forward price to earnings, sorry, 1 year forward EV
EV to
EBITDA, which
EBITDA.
is another metric that we use so that we don't have to look at end-end profits and we're looking at the entity's possible valuation. At a 1 year forward, it's at 20 times, and Apollo is at a little less than that at 16, 17 times hovering. So it's valued more, not just because of how well it's doing, but I think I'm sure like valuation is a mix of numbers, growth, and sentiment. In this, I'd like to believe that sentiment plays a huge role. I'm hoping that the investors who have invested in the stock know the story, know the gravity of what they're investing into, and the fact that the mission is so pure and perfect. The intention of investing in this should be, ki, I'm going to help someone.
Yeah, I think as of now it will purely be based on the sentiment, but
Right.
as and when the numbers start coming in, they start posting in results, then we'll get to know
Correct.
is there any change in the valuation? Do people still think it should be traded at a premium to Apollo, or
Right.
they should be treated at par. So
Correct.
yeah, right now, I think it might be fully based on, not fully, but majorly
I
should
mean,
be
they
based
do
on
have the
sentiments.
growth
Yeah.
to prove it, but I'm sure like a certain aspect is sentiment based, and we may see that sentiment waver. But as you said, as numbers come in, that sentiment will either increase or decrease. But yeah, Robin Hood of heart surgery is definitely doing well. Not, in fact, until I was informed of this company, let's say a couple of months ago, I had no idea what the story was. And the last week has opened my eyes to a whole new level, and I've gained a whole new respect for doctors. I mean, imagine having to face the problem statement of 54 million heart patients in India, out of which maybe 10-12% are able to gain access to a surgery at all. The rest are just the choice between do I live or do I pay is the kind of crux problem that Dr. Devi Shetty is dealing with, and dealt with so beautifully that this stock becomes a very close to your heart stock if you are a very emotional investor, as I am.
Oh.
Ah, kya baat hai. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our story. This time it's a short, sweet little story about how a little boy from South India just grew up and made his dream come true for not just himself, but millions of Indians worldwide. And he's made the rich healthier as well, but who cares about
And
that?
he's making people rich as well.
And he's making people rich as well. So he's done this incredibly well. Do watch his TED talk because there's a lot of insight that you could derive from there as well. Not just about medicine, but about helping people, and that it's not a fake person making a fake commitment anymore. Like this company is through and through an emotionally driven company that is also incredible at unit economics. So it's a good combination of how vision and mission is executed perfectly and how that
And maybe
translates.
that is why they are able to execute it in a much better way, because
Exactly.
they feel connected to the
Correct.
this business or in helping people. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's all for this week. Stay
Yes.
tuned for the next podcast. Hopefully, we'll bring you stories like these in a much shorter, crisper fashion. Do check out our description in below where we have our blog. And if you do want to analyze how your portfolio looks, but from a third party perspective, we offer free portfolio reviews as well. Do check out that link in the description as well. Have I missed out anything, Pratik?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yes, sir. And that's all for today. Take care, stay
Yeah.
safe,
See you guys.
and thank you.